Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com, also on BitChute and YouTube, the Speaking Podcast. My four other podcasts, the Awakening Podcast, Learn Polish Podcast, Meditation Podcast, and the Crypto Podcast, and all can be found on roycon.com. Today, my guest, currently in Israel, please welcome Daniel Alfon.
Roy, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with the Speaking Podcast community.
No problems. You might let the listeners know. Who's Daniel?
Danny is a normal guy who got his first sales job and got scared. And hopefully for me, it was 2 years after I joined LinkedIn. I joined LinkedIn in 2004. And LinkedIn showed me at one time the name of the distributor I needed to be speaking with. And it simply made my sales cycle a lot shorter. And from that moment on, I closed more deals. I was able to double the company sales, and I decided to invest into that curious thing called LinkedIn, which, as you know, is a very powerful business community, but often misunderstood.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know you're an author of a book as well, and you've done workshops and a lot on it. I suppose what I'd like to know is, because I've been at an early stage, I got involved in LinkedIn. I always liked it. I thought, you Facebook for your friends, but LinkedIn for the business side of things. But it has changed a lot. I'm not sure, like Microsoft bought it, I don't know when, but I think they've improved it. But I'd like to know the journey of how it kind of evolved, LinkedIn.
Wow. Very roughly, I agree with you. I think Microsoft has not deteriorated the LinkedIn platform. There's still a lot of improvement that needs to be done. It's not. It's clunky. It's not user friendly, and thanks to that, I run my business. But it's not very easy to use. Every time you speak with someone and you ask him, so where should you click in order to achieve that? They always point to one direction, and it's never there. So there's still improvement to be done. I think Microsoft was careful and is careful not to over dominate the way LinkedIn looks and feels. And it's a conservative, professional, slow, and even heavy platform compared with other social media platforms that we're all using on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And like a lot of people, whether you're listening to the audio or the video, we'll have links on the show notes to show you Daniel's LinkedIn thing. But I know that you have on the circle where you see the picture, yours actually moves, which is very cool. And I'm sure that's going to grab a lot of people's attention. One, you might let us know how the results from actually doing that. And two, how do you do that?
With pleasure, Roy. Like almost everything about LinkedIn, it's free. You don't have to invest money into it. Just think about the ideal 20 to 25-second video pitch you would like to use. So your pitch could be very similar to the beginning of this show, mentioning the podcast, the Speaking Podcast, the Learn Polish Podcast, the Crypto Podcast. And you can simply invite people to check those podcasts out. And you remember that the video will play muted. So you need to be either to have transcripts or to make it very easy to understand. And it will take any listener like a minute to do. We need a LinkedIn app for that. And then you simply click on your profile photo, you select the video, and from that moment on, anyone visiting your profile will see that video message. And like you observed, 99% of LinkedIn users don't have one, and most are still even surprised when you start speaking with them. So they imagine that Roy has moved from Poland to Utah just to speak with them, because they see you move, and it's still surprising for them.
Yeah, and because when I actually clicked it, so you don't hear it when you look at it, or you put the cursor over it, but when you actually go in, then I was able to hear your message. It's actually connected. It's only a short 20 seconds or something like that. Yeah,
you're right, but you observed it, and I like the fact that you remember it.
So I suppose, I mean, we can go down a lot of different routes on this, but I suppose because there's a lot of coaches that listen to this, a lot of speakers, and there's a lot of kind of entrepreneurs as well. Like I wasn't aware, but I was told about the picture at the top as well, because a lot of people actually don't use that. And I've heard you on another show actually saying that you change it around. You still do that? That you every, I don't know, 2 weeks or a month that you would actually change that?
Yeah, I play with it a lot, but our audience doesn't have to do the same thing. Just uploading one banner will already be a huge improvement. And the banner is a visual element that most people will grasp within, half a second. So it's important that whether you're an entrepreneur, a speaker, or podcast host, you could leverage that space to show people what you produce, the content you produce, or the name of your show, or the name of your keynote, or the name of the podcast. Because your special case, LinkedIn will need to maybe have 5 banners for Roy just to show the podcast he has. But for most people, they could promote one, or they could just maybe pick 1 or 2, and it strikes, and it's important. Other elements that speakers can and should leverage are the profile headline. The profile headline by default is simply the name of the latest employer with their titles. So it could be, it could be podcast host XYZ or owner at ABC, but you can tweak that and make it more interesting. And your own headline combines both the podcasting element and also the real estate element. And it's important to understand even the website design element. So who's your ideal reader on LinkedIn? And maybe, Roy, what information would you like to show them? And at what order would you like them to see that information? Because if web design was first, then people will imagine that's the main service you'd like them to know about.
Okay. And with the main picture then, is it possible to have it that it rotates, or like a bit, the way sometimes you have like the picture that has some movement? So for example, if you had the earphones with the voice frequency going across, or does it have to be a stationary picture?
It is a stationary picture, I'm afraid, but you could use an audiogram from the speaking podcast or any other podcast, so people would understand. They would simply understand it's a podcast, even though they will not hear the audio. It's still a universal sign that most people will understand. Maybe one day LinkedIn will also make it, you would be able to add some moves into it, but right now it has to be static.
Okay. No, brilliant. And I suppose we'll come back to the LinkedIn, because I know it's your specialty, but we might as well talk about some of the speaking as well. So obviously you've done kind of workshops, I would assume, lots of workshops with the LinkedIn to maybe perhaps get clients or just to educate people on what's going on. So you might kind of, I suppose, the first time you started doing it, your first 10, and then what you've developed, the skills that you've learned to improve.
With pleasure. I think when I started my career, first 4 years, I was a teacher, so it gave me some elements that are important. I know some non-speakers and even some speakers would, when they think of going on stage, they would easily trade it for a root canal or anything, because we were afraid of the stage itself. But the adrenaline and dopamine that it gives it can't be explained. Like the minute it ends, you feel like you were able to speak with people and help them, and people speak with you afterwards. It's the energy, the amount of energy you can get from speaking is fabulous. And I started, I think one of my clients is an outplacement firm called LHH, and I started providing them with a LinkedIn workshop back in 2007 or 2008. And every month, more or less, I would give one. So it helped me polish the, first dive into LinkedIn deeper and see what's under the hood and what changes occur, and have a simple system how people can leverage LinkedIn platform. If we focus on the profile, then I can ask you 2 or 3 very simple questions, and speakers can relate to that, and entrepreneurs can relate to that. Shall we?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
cool. So who's your ideal prospect, or who is the ideal reader you'd like on LinkedIn for you, Roy?
I suppose at this stage now, because
Yes.
I'm making a shift in what I'm doing and deciding that it's people that want to have a coach for podcasting.
Excellent. What action would you like them to perform after they visit your profile?
What I'm thinking of doing is having a webinar done pre-recorded that they actually could go into that, which in turn then will give value. And for those that would like to would realize that there's good value to be got, and that if they want to be held by the hand to go from A to Z with all the different things in between, that there's a service available for that.
Excellent. So you answered the first 2 questions, and now if you sat with a friend and asked him, say you were considering launching a podcast, and you would bump into my own LinkedIn profile, and you would know nothing about me. Can you look at my LinkedIn profile and say what and describe your thoughts to me? And I can be that friend for a second and tell you that when I see your banner and your photo, it does provide me with a speaking element, but you could improve even that by having either the audiogram or something that mentions the word podcast, or a mic, or something that would make people understand within the first second that podcasting is something you know a lot about, and you're a serial entrepreneur. You have more podcasts than you have 600 episodes just to this podcast I'm speaking about. Not to mention the crypto one, not to mention the Learn Polish ones. So you can even improve your banner, tweak your headline, and provide them with the webinar, say in the featured section. That's easily done. And that will increase the chances, Roy, of people visiting your profile and moving in your funnel towards that webinar. Once you have the system in place, it's easy to make them understand why they need to watch that webinar. And when the webinar provides value, that more people will say, I listened to the webinar, and now I understand A, B, and C. I'd like to work with you, Roy, about D and E. Maybe Z is something even too far for them to fathom, but certainly the next step is something they would be interested in.
Okay. And because I see some people put up like PDFs or presentations. So I tried my best to figure it out, but I couldn't. And I have bought a book. It's not yours. It's the dummies version, and I've marked all the things, so I know I need to action it. And I'm loving what you're telling me here, because it's actually fantastic advice. With, like, say, I've been #1 in a lot of the podcasts. I've been #1 in the USA and in the UK, in loads of different countries. And I would love to actually have the picture. Is it possible for me to have like a kind of slideshow or something that people go in and they see that? Because I think because people are curious when they check someone's profile out, they tend to click around, and maybe something like that as well might grab attention. I'm not sure. Just curious. What's your thoughts on that one?
Excellent. Can we do it? Are you willing to do it now?
I wouldn't have the stuff gathered together, but if you can just tell me, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do that off recording. The things I would do is this. Imagine that Roy would add to this call a number of entrepreneurs who are or podcast hosts or people who are thinking about launching their podcast. Then what is the first link you would like those people to see? Is it a webinar? Is it something else? What would you like them to see?
I mean, if I'm thinking out loud, I would think not everybody would spend the time for the webinar, but if they saw what I just mentioned, #1, and that I'm in the for the podcast are in the top 0.5%. I know that changes, it may be different today, but they're usually around the top 0.5%. So even a screenshot showing that, they would kind of know that, I'm competent at what I'm doing.
Excellent. So if you have the screenshot, let me describe what you do. You go to your own profile, and when you go to your profile, you look for the Add Profile section in the center of the screen on desktop. And when you click on that, The second option should say recommended. This can all be in the show notes. When you click on recommended, you click on featured. And once you click on featured, if there is nothing featured, you look for the plus sign. And then there are 4 possibilities: post, article, link, and media. The screenshot would be under media. So we select add media. We go to the desktop folder, we select that image, and we highlight it using the featured section. And what you could do down the road is maybe add either a short video out of the complete webinar or something that would be maybe 30 seconds or 2 minutes, and that would increase the chances of people discovering the webinar. It's easily done. It can be done within a minute and a half, and it's worth it because people will understand. If you can make your profile more visually attractive, visitors are likely to spend more time on your profile, understand the value that you bring to them, and convert outside of LinkedIn. So the conversion itself does not usually happen on LinkedIn. It happens on your website where you want people to consume the webinar or sign up for a strategy call, or say I'm moving to Lodge and I'm looking for a home for my family. Can we work with us? So the conversion would happen outside of LinkedIn, and I imagine your screenshot could be up there later today. So today, midnight your time, I'll check your profile to see if the screenshot is there.
Okay.
And if not, I'll make a shaming campaign.
Fly over and give me a clatter. No, excellent. And because I know I made one mistake before is, like you mentioned, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I had a list of all the stuff I was doing. And one says I had over 10 companies in Poland running together, and they were all doing different things, different syndicates. And I took it away because I thought nobody's going to believe this, even though one company was building houses, another being apartment blocks, another was managing and renovating properties. Like, now that I'm kind of going down a different angle, does it matter? Should I just not even resurrect that?
You raise a very valid point, and maybe one way to simplify it for people who are not close friends would be to have one entity. Let's call it Roy's real estate world, and under that entity you could have 5 or 10 different businesses, but people would see one umbrella term for everything real estate related. And then you can list 1, 2. That's okay. That it wouldn't seem too difficult for people to grasp, and that would make it easier. Like one real estate entity, one podcasting entity. We can grasp 2. If it moves to 5 and 6, then most people will feel confused and mixed up. So just simply move everything real estate into one umbrella position, where you can describe all 10 and all 12 ventures you've had, and they would happily live with the podcasting coaching business.
No, that makes sense. And one that was the Polar, because it was Pole for Polish, Era for Ireland. That's why I have that one there, and I can put all the different companies that were under it and what I did. So that makes sense. So regarding what you just said there, because that makes sense, because if I look at it now, I've got all the 5 podcasts, and it's kind of, so I suppose podcast coach, and then underneath that say speaking podcast, and perhaps state what it's about as well as the position it's in, and that makes more sense. That looks more professional, and it's because I know that I've looked at other people's profiles, and you're looking at the experience, and then you have to hit another button to go and see all of their experience, and it takes you off the main page. And I know that I'm okay going back, but I know not everybody does, and it's like you don't want them to be distracted, because at the end of the day I want to keep them on the main page so that they hit on the webinar. And
You're absolutely right. We can imagine that each time someone clicks or moves elsewhere, we may lose maybe 20 or 50% of people who don't want to perform that action, even if it's 2 seconds. So it is best to prioritize. You can have dozens of businesses, and speakers can have dozens of businesses or dozens of professional activities. Simply ask yourself, what is the number one activity I would like my LinkedIn presence to promote for me? In a way, if real estate clients are reaching you because they have heard about you from people, then your LinkedIn profile could only cater to podcasting clients. And making a choice is difficult, but it's worth it. If you were all in about real estate or all in about podcasting, you may gain a lot more than a bit of this and a bit of that. And if you're unsure, simply ask yourself, will LinkedIn likely bring me more podcasting clients or more real estate clients? And you would know the answer. I have a guess, but I think you know the answer.
Exactly. No, excellent advice. Excellent advice. And like, I know prior to recording, we were discussing your language skills. So obviously Hebrew, and you speak French as well. Do you, because I know there's an option of having the different languages, do you recommend people actually, I don't know how it works, to be honest. Is it that when somebody from France goes in, they see your French one, or how does the languages work on LinkedIn?
Oh, that's an advanced feature. Yes, you can set up your language in your profile, in more than one language. And the simple test question would be, what language are your prospects using? So if there's, say, Chinese investors who are looking to invest in Poland or launch podcast, or one of the main audiences you're looking for, then you could basically duplicate your profile, and the headings would be in Chinese and the structure would be in Chinese. So there is a number of available languages, and if a key audience does not work easily in English, then it is worthwhile having your profile set up in a second language.
Like, because I mean, obviously I know the biggest market for podcasts, and just from my listeners, are the USA and the UK, but perhaps, because I've even thought of that, if China was big, even if you needed a translator, that, because I'm not going on an hourly basis, I'm going kind of more the high end stuff, that if you had somebody that's because at the end of the day, it's the same thing, the information that I'm able to teach. So that would actually work if I found that there is actually a high uptake in podcasts in China, say.
Yeah, the easiest question is to ask yourself who you're interested in outside of LinkedIn, and then see how LinkedIn can help you achieve that. So if you wake up in the morning and understand that the Chinese market is up and coming and promising for you, then tweaking your profile to appeal to Chinese visitors would be worthwhile. And even if you don't have an international audience, or even if your home market is large enough, thinking keyword in search is also important, because LinkedIn is a huge search engine. There are billions of searches that are run on the platform. So maybe as we're speaking, there are hundreds of people who are looking for podcast coaches. So think in terms of the terms they would use. What terms would they use? They would use podcasting. Maybe they would use audio. You would use marketing. They would use monetizing. They would use Riverside, Zoom, or all sorts of other terms. Try to incorporate as many terms as you can recognize under the podcasting section, under the relevant section in your own profile. That is likely to make more people discover you via search. Not only people you're connected with, not only people who listen to your podcast, but people who find you via search. And then you can convert them into your funnel, seeing the screenshot, saying, okay, he knows what he's talking about, and then going to the webinar and eventually become a paying customer. So what terms would you like people to use when they look you up? What are the 3 strongest terms you think?
I would say podcasting coach would be the one, or starting a podcast. That kind of anything mentioned, but not like, what I've noticed is if you use the hashtag podcast, you get bombarded with people trying to promote a podcast, and it's just it gets painful, like, because they're reaching out pretending you're a friend, and they don't even get the no thanks doesn't work. They'll write you 500 times. So I even advise other people, don't use hashtag podcast, but I don't think like the podcasting coach or starting a podcast, and something similar would be the kind of the ones that I would be thinking would be the best.
Excellent. So you don't have to use the hashtags at all. You can simply leverage the experience section that you have or the about section that you have, and looking up. Podcast is obviously there. The word coaching isn't there. So think about the best place you would use the term coaching in your profile, and remember that when someone runs a search, LinkedIn searches through your whole profile, from the headline to the about section to the experience section down to the education and skills. And if you add the relevant keywords, more people are likely to find you.
Okay, and because I'm promoting all of my podcasts on my LinkedIn and on all different social media, I mean, like I've got a Facebook page for each one.
Yeah.
And sometimes what I'm doing is I'd write the name episode, whatever number, with the guest, and then I'd have the show notes, what we've discussed, and also about the guest. Would it be to my advantage in that, because I can include that easily, stating as well, if you're interested in starting a podcast, or would that actually go against me? Because I can be doing that each time I'm doing a post.
Wow, that's a good question. I wouldn't recommend using that systematically on your posts. Okay. But I would start with your profile first and make sure that it's clear to anyone who visits your profile that you can help them grow their podcast or launch their podcast. And when you share, what you could do is look at it from the reader's perspective. So I was listening to a fabulous episode you released with Patti Perry, Farmer, about speaking, and there were a lot of quotes about what she called opportunities, OPP, and other people's people, and better have relevant few people than many irrelevant people in your audience, and it's not enough to connect. And it took her some time to understand that she didn't have to be someone else to be a speaker. She could be herself, and that made it easier for her. So maybe taking a quote from the actual episode and making it more interesting from the reader's perspective can gain you more traffic than saying episode number 227, because episode 227 is from our side, but the reader, if the episode is interesting, it doesn't matter to them whether it's episode number 5 or 300. Whenever we share, try to think about it from the consumer's end. What will make people say, yes, I want to spend more time discovering that and listening to that podcast? It requires some time instead of just sending the link, but I think it could be worth playing with and see whether you see more downloads, more traffic, and a better listening rate if you try to tweak the headline, maybe use a visual, and also tag the guest.
Yeah, I do tag the guest, but I like what you said. I think that's actually a fantastic idea of having the quote, because I edit myself. I don't outsource it. I know I could do that, but it's my way of, like, even this, I know that when I'm editing this, I'll enjoy it again because there's so much value. Plus I'll be pausing it and doing what you've actually recommended and doing, because it's not something that you could just listen and then go away and do it. It's one of these ones, and like having the quote on it, I think it's a fantastic thing, because I'm just putting episode number 233 of whatever, and it's like, so what if I'm somebody outside, so what? Whereas when you see something decent quote, it grabs your attention and a higher chance of people listening in.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So does like I'm seeing now, people are even asking for endorse me on the thing. So does the endorsement that I don't even look at that on my own profile, to be honest. I know there's a lot of people have endorsed me for different things. Like, is there a big advantage to that? And then we can follow up then with the actual a recommendation. So when somebody's like writing like a testimonial for you.
Okay. So definitely recommendation ranks higher than an endorsement on LinkedIn. I think that goes without saying. Endorsements are a social game that went too far. Okay, it's not very important, and listing the skills you want to be found for is way more important than the endorsements. Because if I visit your profile and I look at the list of skills and the endorsements, then they need to speak about what you want to show. So it's entrepreneurship, that's the first one, and then negotiation, and then real estate. So one easy thing you could do, I hope I'm not making too much of giving you too many assignments,
No,
but
no,
you
it's
can
all
easily
fantastic. I'm loving this.
cool. You can reorder the skills.
Uh-huh.
So instead of having negotiation, entrepreneurship, and real estate, maybe podcast coaching or podcast consulting could be among the top three. And then that would mean anyone visiting your profile would see those up front, and it would be on brand with what you want to tell them about the services that you offer. I'm afraid you'll have to make a choice whether real estate or helping podcasters
The
is
real
going to
estate
be your number one.
has burnt. It's done its journey. I mean, there's still a little bit, but it's not. My passion for that is gone. I went through that journey, so I know that it's podcasting is the thing that I thoroughly enjoy.
Okay, so let's turn it into Roy's law. Okay, let's speak in very general terms for our audience here and for speakers. When you rewrite or update your LinkedIn profile, think ahead and think 3 to 6 months ahead. Where would you like the business to be in 6 months? Or where would you like your speaking career to be in 6 months? And if you know that real estate has done great things for you, but it's not the future, then you need to dilute the real estate or whatever. Some speakers would have wellness, and then they moved into ethics. So move the wellness into the back of your store. It can be there. It maybe hundreds of people have worked with you. It's fine, but the storefront is better showing what you'd like people to know about in 3 months and in 6 months. And a major difference between our CV and our LinkedIn profile is that the CV is basically a record of I was working for that company between 2015, 2017, whatever, but our LinkedIn profile can show the direction we're headed today. And if you know that you're headed towards podcasting, then right now there's a gap between what people are hearing and what people are seeing on LinkedIn. If you minimize that gap, you're gold.
No, excellent, excellent. And like I see sometimes as well, because anytime I've guests on, I mean, I do my homework. I check out a lot of stuff. So I'd go into the LinkedIn as well, and with some, I have noticed that with the recommendations, they might give 50 recommendations, but they've received kind of similar, and it's like, hey, I give you one, you give me one, and you kind of know it. So I would think that's not a great strategy to use.
No, but what you've done is excellent. Visiting people's recommendation and see the ratio between the recommendation they've written and the recommendation they received gives you a lot of insights about them. You would see for some people it would be roughly the same thing, whether it's 2 or 15, and others have written 20 recommendation and have received 1 recommendation. That's a red flag.
Yeah.
That's a red flag because it means that even though LinkedIn has pushed 20 people, John Doe has recommended you, would you like to recommend them? Then no one stood to do that action. So you need to try not to dilute your currency or your name, but by providing 2,000 recommendation while having only 10. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. What I'm thinking of doing, and I know this is kind of, I'm talking about me, but I know that anybody, whether you're a speaker or a coach, because so many people especially coaches, there's very few that is a coach for life. They've done loads of things. So I know that this is relevant, what we're discussing, for so many people, entrepreneurs especially. What I'm thinking, I've got amazing, like 5-star recommendations. Some people on the review that have been on the show, and other times people would write to me beautiful messages. It's like really, really, and I was thinking of reaching out to these people and saying, look, I loved your message. Is it possible that you would put that on the recommendation for the thing? And I'm assuming that would be of benefit, because then people are, and it's genuine. It's nobody making up fake stuff. It's like real, comments that people have given me.
That's a great idea. I think most people would be happy to do that. And if by any chance they would agree, but they can't find the time to do it, they would certainly allow you to use that screenshot as part of the media you're showing people on your profile. Because we have to remember one thing about recommendations. Before we see your recommendations, Roy, we need to scroll at least 5 or 6 times. So many people will not go that far. Whether if you had a screenshot of a strong recommendation featured or under the podcasting coaching, then 50% of people will see it, and maybe 5% will see the recommendation at the bottom. So think about it really as a funnel. There's no way for anyone to discover your recommendations before deciding six times they want to scroll and learn more.
Okay, and like what we discussed earlier, with kind of having that next to like the webinar where I'm showing the different podcasts where I've been in the charts. If I had something like that as well, where because I can even go into the Apple and you can see the exact recommendation. So if I created a kind of thing like that as well, I presume that would all add to.
Yes, let's take it to the next level. Try to build a digital portfolio inventory of the assets you'd like people to see. And one could be the charts, and another could be strong recommendations, and a third could be the speaking podcast, and a fourth could be the Learn Polish podcast, whatever you'd like. And then you prioritize them, and you ask yourself, A, who's my ideal reader? Say someone launching the podcast. And then what is the strongest link or the strongest image that is likely to move them to want to learn more about you? Probably the charts, I'm guessing, or at least the charts would be on the top. So try to make sure they see the charts first. If they scroll down and they discover you and they go to the experience section, now they can understand that you've also been in real estate, that's fine. But if it's the other way around, we see real estate, then most people will not discover the charts. Most people will not go to see what's hidden there. So deciding how to prioritize your various ventures is difficult, I understand. It's like, amputing a part of our body, but it makes it more interesting and likelier to convert.
Excellent. Listen, I thoroughly enjoy all the. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with people? Because this is gold for me. I mean, thoroughly gold. I know it'll make a massive difference, and it's just no a case of you. I know you're watching me, and you're going to make sure I do it, which is brilliant.
I think it's. I don't want to be too overwhelming. It's really simple. Try to make your profile speak for itself. If you know what direction you'd like to take your business in 2022 and 2023, what information, who's your ideal reader, what information would you like to show them, and start, just make the baby step. Find that media and feature it. Remove part that you're no longer interested in and move it to some lower parts. And it's a work in progress. If you do it every 3 months, then it may take you as little as 15 minutes. But if you forget about it for 2 years, then your business has moved so far that you need to work a lot harder to minimize that gap.
Excellent. Excellent. Fantastic advice. So Daniel, how can people get in contact with you?
With pleasure. They can visit danielalfon.com. and then they could read articles or subscribe to the newsletter or download a giveaway, a freebie about their profile headline on LinkedIn. And if they message me and say, I was listening to the episode with Roy on speaking, then that would make them top of my list.
Brilliant. Excellent. And I'll make sure I put all the links as well as your LinkedIn profile as well on both the show notes for audio and the video. So
that's very sweet.
Thank you
very much.
So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. As mentioned, we're on BitChute and YouTube. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, and check out my LinkedIn profile. I never reject any applications for people that want to connect with me. Until next week, take care.